Purposes of assessments. People most often use language assessments to collect two kinds of data. One is the connected with the learning of the language, which assessing the degree of process toward a learning goal. These purposes are important in schools and other educational settings. And so the assessment used to collect data come under the heading of educational assessments. Educational language assessments usually takes place within language programs. The procedures are usually based on the contents that has been or will be thoughts are frequently developed and carried out by teachers and can be often flexible, allowing from use of observational techniques, watching and recording what learnings do, portfolios, collections of learning work, self-assessments, and learning making judgments about their own abilities. And informal tests of the quizzes as well as the formal tests administered under more strictly controlled conditions. The seconds of the information connected with whether or not a person's languages ability to adequate to satisfy some predetermined need of standard. This is known as the proficiency assessments. The assessments of language proficiency is usually connected to the language and related skills that are needed to carry out a job, study, and academic subjects to fulfill other kinds of role. Because the focus is not of what of the assessment being taught, the kinds of assessments is less likely to be carried teachers and more likely to involve formal tests administered under the controlled uniform standardized conditions and produced by the national or international agencies. Proficiency assessments are the distinct from the educational assessments because they do not center on learning processes or outcomes of particular course of study. Proficiency assessments are connected with the person's current functionally rather than learning that we assess can accomplish throughout the use of the language. Now, these points on how to long with might take the arrive of the higher ability in proficiency assessments and issue that the person being assessed has sufficient language ability to satisfy certain needs. Proficiency assessments are often used for keeping decisions, immigration, assessment of employment, and educational opportunities. This may relate the relative need specific purpose such as using the language leading groups of the tourists around city working as a dentist, steering ships in an international water or studying marketing at university, or it may be less specialized or less clearly definable general purposes that they might apply to very high and range tasks that many language users might need to carry out at some point might include reserving a room in a hotel or guest house of filling in a forms with the basic personal information, buying foods, following televisions, news, programs, readings, articles in a popular magazines, or holding conversations about personal experiences. Educational assessments is a teaching and learning assessments can take a place at different stages during the learning process. Before they begin a course in a new language, we may be interested in the learner's aptitude for language learning. Their potential to learn, although will almost anyone can learn a foreign language given the time and motivations. Some people may be disposed to make faster progress than others. A sports coach looking for someone with potential and be good basketball player may try to find someone who is tall and be able to jump high quickly and reactions of good coordination and competitive spirit. In the same way, some of the selective language training programs such as those organized by military and need to pick up from the large group of applicants those with the greatest potential of the learn language quickly. The Premature Language Aptitude Battery Premier at et al. 2004, for example, set out the identity potential language learning individuals with a good memory for word shapes and sounds of good and discriminating between similar sounds at identifying grammatical patterns and who have an interest in other cultures. Partly because motivation is now widely regarded as more important than aptitude to shaping language learning success of most language courses cater for learners who already have some knowledge of the language aptitude test for the widely used of they used to be. In its modern, often providers with me wish to find out much of the content of the course language learners already known before they begin. In this case, assessment B, prognostic, looking forward to the content plan for the courses of deciding priorities concerned with the achievement, looking back to what learners have been taught to find how much they have absorbed and what might need to be covered again. Aptitude and prognostic assessments are used to inform selections decisions, deciding which learners would require language courses or choosing those most likely to succeed. They may also be used in inform placement decisions about which is available classes, best match its learner needs during a course of achievements, assessments as a progress test that might be used to gauge an ongoing improvement by the learners. At the end of this exit test, they are often used for making pass or fail decisions or in assigning grades in using achievements assessment. The teacher may be interested in obtaining detailed diagnostic information about which parts of the materials and learner have taken in all, which parts will be need more work in assessing learning. A distinction of made between more formative use of assessment that may immediately guide teachers and learners will do next, and summative uses which focus on retrospective picture that have been learned. Another way of expressing distinction is the form assessment for the learning. Contrast with is as a assessment of learning. Black William 1998, in other words of Wiggins 1998, term summative assessment audits and learning formative assessments inform that it an example of this formative diagnostic assessment would be a teacher observing that some students are having difficulty or distinguish between four scenes when taking about time in English. The teacher might decide to interview about asking questions or providing examples to help build their understanding of the distinction. This kind of assessment is informed learning because the teacher is able to adjust the content of the class to take account of the students' performance. The focus is on what should be happen next in the classroom to bring about learning. An example of more summative assessment would be an end of the year based on the topic thoughts being the year. Test audits learning by the providing evidence of what the student have learned on how they met the course objective. The focus is on finding out how much learning has happened, like the formative assessment describe about such as a test include questions dealing with the specific points of grammar, such as for this since distinction found in a diagnostic test, but the result may not be available until the school year has finished and there is no immediate opportunity to work on improving in performance as well. Students have left. In this case of the resulting might be used of program evaluation judgments. In this case, the result might be used by program evaluation or judgments about the effectiveness of the language course rather than on the abilities of individual learners. Gaining an awareness of how well the learners are progressing is of course easiest when the learners is also involved and interested in the process of share their insights with their teachers. Good learners themselves targets things about how best to learn, trying out of evaluating new techniques and even reflects on their own progress towards their goals. Self-assessments and peer assessments in which learners assess their own each other's performance have emerged as powerful means of the engaging learners in this process and helping to take more control to their own learning. Of course, teaching can become challenging when the learners do not want to learn or are unwilling to communicate. This brings us to another reason for using assessments motivating learners, because assessments are often associated with rewards assessed to opportunities such as scores or jobs, prize, certificates, grades, praise, and attention from the teacher. They can serve as a powerful motivation for learners. However, using assessments in this maybe is risky and potentially very damaging. In some case, it can actually have a negative effect on learner's motivation. The learner who repeatedly fails to gain good grades or pass tests will sooner or later become frustrated, conclude that language learning is not worth the effort, and give up even trying to learn. Formative diagnostic assessment by providing helpful feedback, information about performance that can show the learner that what he or she needs to do in order to improve, promises to guide learning to their studies. However, for many learners, especially those informal schooling, success on tests, especially major proficiency tests, may come to seem more important than successful communication in language they learning, where happens the content the test can take over from the official curriculum, and learning goals that are not covered on the test may get pushed aside. The ignored teachers may teach and student may try to learn only the material they think will be assessed. The changes in teaching and learning that may come out in response to an upcoming test are known as washback, and this has emerged as an important area of language assessment research. Feedback as a washback are discussed in more detail in Module 4, Educational Assessment on the on hand, particularly formative assessment and proficiency assessment on the other, or often seem are distinct, even incompatible areas of specialization conducted by different people employing different techniques, informed by different theories, and embracing different values. For the reasons they are often treated separately, and the relationship between them ranges from the mutual indifference to sometimes heated conflict. This often play out in summative assessment, where the role of the teacher as the facilitator of learning. The word of formative assessments come up against the need to account for what has been learned in terms of the general standards set by the employers, governments, are other and external agencies. The word summative assessment and proficiency assessment, although the differences between what teachers do in the classroom and large scale testing are important, there are also good deal in common between them. To be effective, both depend above all well crafted questions of about rather techniques that provide useful evidence. Learner abilities task types used in large scale tests can be adapted for use in the classroom, while innovative ideas for tried out in the class can find their way into formal assessments. Both classroom assessments and large scale tests can be improved by careful and critical review throughout experiences. The result from the assessment and one occasional inevitable point to improvement to be made the next time it is used. Achieving good quality in both requires collective and systematic effort. Ways of checking improving language assessments are described in Module 3 and 4, perhaps are the strongest argument for treating assessment in the classrooms and in the examination hall. In the same book is that in healthy educational system, both should work together. If teachers understand how tests work, they will be more effective at preparing their students to take examinations. On the other hand, as Alderson 1999 remarked, testing is important to be left the testers. It is essential that educational tests should reflect the curriculum and the needs of interest of learners. Teachers are familiar with their learners and with the reality of how the curriculum is delivered practice. They are therefore place the judge contest tests to hold test makers to account.